The original 9 normal cats in Battle Cats are super important units, as they not only help showcase how different cats can be through highly distinguishable roles like Dragon's mid-ranging abilities or Wall Cat's great HP for low cost, which can help with the idea of making basic strategies super early on for stages like Japan, Hawaii, or Alaska. But they're also important for even being able to beat the game, as this group of cats will be who you use for the rest of the game in some shape or another. Some are better than others, namely Wall, Island, and Dragon, as they're cats that can always be useful, and some are far worse like Dark and Flying, which are cats that are only useful for very short amount of times, or they're never useful in the first place. Gross Cat sort of falls in between this territory, and his family of cats remain as an interesting case of mostly not being good enough. So today I want to analyze each main member of the Gross Cat family, excluding Brainwash Gross Cat because I don't have him. Based on what the wiki says though, he'd probably clear all the original mainline Gross Cats though with his powerful surge ability, but I'm not sure. He might not. Lil Gross. I think that it's important to start off with the most lackluster unit first. Like all other little cats, he's completely useless in his first and second form since he has lower stats in all areas including small things like movement speed than the other Gross, while costing the same. This means that for his first 2 forms, there's no reason to use them unless you're trying to do something cat combo wise, and even then just use him in true form if you're trying to do that. True form. So the thing about this form and all other little cat forms is that you have to do an awakening stage in order to unlock it. This stage has a rare and special cat only restriction, it's deadly at 10-star difficulty, and there aren't any continues. But it's surprisingly easy as all you need is a power up combo, Bahamut and Valk in order to beat it. But I remember having a hard time with it years ago when I tried it. But even with this extreme ease, is it worth it? No! At level 30, Lil Macho Legs gets 10,880 HP and 3.4k damage, or 816 DPS with 300 range, not accounting for stat boosts. By the time you can easily clear this stage, this is all very horrible. But as a Lil, he has a gimmick, and that gimmick is knocking aliens back and breaking barriers at a 30% chance. Knocking back aliens is pretty mid unless it's Racket Cat doing it, since she does an incredible job of pushing them back when you need to, but his barrier breaker ability is solid. Being able to break barriers not only on 4-star but at a point in the game where you'd probably be in the middle of Cats of the Cosmos can be very helpful, assuming you don't just have Liberty. And they're not restricted on a stage, as Liberty wipes this cat in every thinkable way except cost and cooldown. So if he's a little cat that requires an awakening stage to be true formed, and then when you beat that stage, all you get is a cat that can break shields and knock back aliens at a 30% chance with low DPS, then what's the point? Well, the final possible saving grace for this cat are his talents, which are shield piercing versus Aku enemies, not aliens, curse resist, KB increase, and the usual attack and defense buff. Not useful. First we have to think about his best talent, the shield piercing one. For a total of 165 NP, he gains a 30% chance to break Aku shields, i.e. the same chance he has in knockback or break an alien's barrier. On paper it sounds solid, especially since you can get him way before a point where you'd have someone like Aku Researcher's final form or Aku Researcher at all, and it can definitely help you get cats like that. But once you get a shield breaker with either a higher shield breaking chance, higher range, or better attack rate, then immediately your 165 NP spent buffing Lil Macho goes down the toilet because now it doesn't matter. That's the main problem. Even if you have absolutely no shield breakers, it still isn't worth spending 165 NP in order to get a unit with 300 range for a 30% chance to break Aku shields. It's not good at all for the cost, and his other talents are far worse. Why would you need an extra 10% chance for knocking back aliens for a total of 125 NP? You get 1% extra knockback chance per upgrade. It's worthless. His ability to knock back aliens is already niche, but whenever you get Racket or any other alien knockbacker, that becomes completely useless as well. Resist Curse? Why would you ever bring a cat like this in a relic stage? He's only usable against aliens and starred aliens with barriers, and if he gets hit, he'd probably die immediately. And for a full upgrade, it's a total cost of 125 NP for a 70% reduction in how long this cat would be cursed, not immunity to curse. Oh my gosh. Even at level 50 plus 60, which are his max stats, he has 28k HP and 8k DPS. He does not have 8k DPS, I actually misread this. He has 2.1k DPS. That was a misread from me, my bad everyone, total misread. So even if he did, at the same time, I'm still arguing for if he did have 8k DPS, but just remember that I made a mistake. He actually has 2k DPS, which is infinitely so much worse than that. Like, oh my gosh. Though this DPS is honestly great, that's 25 special cat's eyes, 60 extra little gross cats for the cat capsule, and incredibly hard stages in order to get the little cat max higher. Nobody in their right mind would ever do this, especially with low HP for that amount of work at 28k. It's unfortunate that this cat, unlike a few others, could have been saved by talents or even plus levels, as the talent prices are unreasonable for what you get. What you get from talents isn't good, and it's unreasonable to attempt to grind for this 50 plus 60 max level gross, as getting any little cats is difficult to do with the other things you can get from the little cat capsule. Overall, low gross is one of the worst lils in the game, which is surprising for a gimmicky version of the original gross, which is more of a flawed cat rather than a straight up bad one, I'd say. He has low DPS and HP, his range is terrible, his abilities are mid, he's highly replaceable, his talents suck, and overall, I wouldn't suggest investing even a little bit into this cat. I'm telling you, it's not worth it. Gross. Now we're on to the original Gross cat. Unlike most other normal cats, compared to Lil Gross and Crazed Gross, he lies more on the low end of usability due to his extreme fall off in stats as the game progresses, even with his strong against aliens talent. Ability, not talent. I was under stress when I recorded this, okay? Evolved in first form. His evolved and normal form are basically the same aside from a slight increase in attack frequency. For a lot of the early game, this cat will serve you well. Like what I said earlier in Empire of Cats, for example, he excels throughout most of it. By chapter 3 though, I'd say his usage starts falling off, but this is partially due to the fact that you'd have other cats as well that would be better than Gross due to any possible factor. Final form. Here's what's most interesting, his final form. Macho Legs gains a little more damage and a nice bit more HP by 20 plus 10, though this increase is only really useful for early into the future levels as opposed to any other point in the game. This is because of his even at the time strikingly low damage and DPS, even versus aliens. Effectively, as an only versus aliens, he does 3,400 damage and has 1.2k DPS on aliens at level 20 plus 10, and at level 20 plus 90 he deals 13,350 damage with 3.2k DPS. These numbers even at best are below average, and outside of a lot of earlier stages, he isn't very great. Sacking him does help as he has a 7-second recharge time and 600C cost, but by the time you get Macho's true form, you should either be working towards other better mid-rangers like base cameraman or cyborg, and you may feel comfortable using Cho'Cat. Overall, he basically becomes easily replaceable quickly, and when I was going through into the future, I rarely even chose Macho Legs because he just isn't very good. His range of 350 also doesn't help, and unless your stage is cache tight or something, using a cat like Dragon, which at 20 plus 10 has 1.6k DPS and 50 more range, is probably a better choice, especially because that's 1.6k DPS against all enemies it can hit. I don't hate Gross Cat like I do with Lil Gross Cat because he is an important cat for a small period of the game, unlike any of the littles. But he still is a very, very underwhelming, less than mid cat that has no reason to be in your loadout past into the future chapter 2. Crazed Gross. Here's the best cat on here, well, at least the best one I have experience with. For all I know, Brainwash could be worse or a god tier unit that eclipses Craze like crazy. Is that a pun? If so, it's unintended, but anyway. Craze has to be obtained through beating its Craze stage, similar to Lil Macho's true form, except this time it's easier since you might have Octopus by this time, a high HP wave blocker. It's actually one of the easiest stages now thanks to power creep, and this cat won't waste your time. Waves! Unlike both of its other counterparts, which serve as semi-spammable general or anti-alien mid-rangers with low DPS, Craze works differently. In all of her forms, she'll hit the enemy with some waves, and in her final form, she'll have a wave level of 4. To have this by the time that you get her is pretty incredible, as it's likely that she'd be your only waver, plus her 350 range is good enough to snipe enemies in the back. This makes her an area attacking sniper with all right waves. Each wave does the same as her base damage, which at level 30 is 5,220. This means that if an enemy gets hit by her, they'll take in the damage she kicked them with, and the wave damage you hit them with. So possibly 10,440 damage on one enemy, and meaning that most enemies in that final form 4-wave radius, or all enemies within 1,132 range of Crazed Gross will be hit at least one time with 5,220 damage, assuming of course there aren't any wave immune enemies on the field. With this range and damage, she's great at clearing peons and providing chip damage to bosses if they're behind powerful tanking enemies. And for most stages, thanks to these stats, she's a great pick. I'd say it's understandable to put her in for example, generous loadout because most stages have peons, and it's fair to assume that there may be an enemy that's annoying with long range that only your Crazed Gross can hit. Overall, she's strong, man, but not stackable. That cooldown of 28 seconds isn't a joke, and there's a solid chance that she'll die before you can get another one out. But to me, it doesn't feel like a weakness. It's just more so natural balancing that feels right. Who could have saw it coming? Crazed Gross is the best out of these two by a landslide, and hey, if I ever get brainwashed Gross, then I'll make a video comparing these two. So don't comment anything about how I forgot brainwashed Gross, I just don't have them. Conclusion. Before we fully conclude, here's two verses from different parts of the Bible, but can be sort of connected. John 3:20. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. And Ephesians 5:13. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes a light. People who do evil or secret things will always be illuminated by the Lord's light for everyone to see their misdeeds. And in that way, it becomes a light, as people will know it's there. Its brightness would determine on how evil the action is, of course, but I think of verses like these every day. And it's important to remember that you have to move with transparency and honesty instead of committing misdeeds either against God or against your fellow man, since it'll come back in at least your next life. Besides, living life like that is gonna leave your soul empty. Certainly do subscribe for more Christian Battle Cats content, as in there'll be a verse at the end of each video, and I encourage my viewers to get into spirituality on some level, and you can support my videos by leaving comments and likes. Have a good day, everyone.